Make contact, stay connected. Hey friends, Diego the podcaster here, asking you to please subscribe today to KGRA Digital Broadcasting. KGRA Digital Broadcasting is the #1 official contact for the best paranormal and alternative digital broadcasting network on the planet. Subscribe today and get full access to all content. Watch or listen to shows in our classic vault containing all our current archives and the KGRA classic broadcasts. Use promo code Let's Find Out and save 30% on your membership. That's promo code Let's Find Out in all caps to save 30% off your membership today. Make contact, stay connected. Go to kgradb.com. That's kgradb.com today.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
Transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, renowned for her diverse talents and profound creative vision, our guest is a best-selling author across multiple genres, with her captivating history and haunting book series gaining worldwide acclaim through prominent features on international radio, podcast, and television programs. Focusing on the chilling and intriguing, her Countdown to Murder series delves into the enigmatic true crime narratives that have captured audiences globally. Beyond her literary prowess, she boasts a prolific portfolio as a muralist, having painted over 4,000 murals nationwide, with additional credits as an escape room and game creator, former TV talk show host, and model. Her multifaceted expertise shines brightly in the realms of both artistry and storytelling. All this plus more. Before we bring in our guest, we do have a special guest co-host. He's known worldwide as the Archangel of the Paranormal and versed on the psychology of the criminal mind, and an expert researcher on serial killers. He is Thomas Patrick Gormley. Thomas, my friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out.
Great to be here, my friend Raph. It's been a little bit, but I'm glad to be on, especially tonight, with our special guest who is amazing, and can't wait to talk about how we met and what has transpired during that time.
Absolutely. And I think the last time I had you on, we did a special show with Adam Began, and we talked about the Bigfoot murders that happened about, I think, last year, 2 years ago. I think we never wrapped that one up because I know what happened, but we'll save that for another show. So, Thomas, you and your partner had a very successful Paracon over the summer.
Yep.
How did that go? And how are we looking for 2025? We're going to have another one? What's going on?
We are definitely going to have another one. As the shaman and the showman, me being the shaman, my partner Charles Rosenay being the showman, we do a lot of Paracons. We do a lot of big stuff. We do a lot of medium stuff and some smaller stuff. But the big ones is the Connecticut Paracon, with 2 N's being Connecticut, and the Salem Horror Paranormal Festival. And now we have the Witch Trials Festival. So those big 3 ones and all that. So those are all coming in 2025. Every time we do them, usually Connecticut Paracon is the second week of July. Past year, we did Salem in October. We decided to bring it back to November, so the second week of November. The Witch Trials Festival will probably be again, probably mid-October, mid-August. And, throw in some psychic fairs, and some people get to come investigate with us, which is always a big thing. And we get to go all these places nobody really goes. So it's nice and fresh for people to get that experience with us.
Just a normal day in the office for you, my brother, because I know you're always busy.
Yeah.
But we always find time to test each other and send each other ideas. So I love you for that, man. That's a great thing you do for all of us, not just me, but for the rest of the historically haunted booking folks there. So bringing in tonight's guest, friends of the show, please welcome author, storyteller, and artist Rebecca F. Pittman. Rebecca, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out. It's a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I know Thomas, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you, Raf.
Oh, I appreciate that. And when we were talking earlier on the pre-interview, that there's so I was reading your bio, and I'm very impressed by what it is you've done. And there's so many topics we can choose from during your career, and I feel that we can probably go 2 or 3 hours, but I promise it was not going to go that long. Not only with paranormal, your novels, and modeling. So the question is, out of all these things, all these accomplishments that you've had so far, what came first?
The modeling. My mother owned a modeling agency before I was born. So I've been on a runway since I was 5. And not the kind that you think of, like with the Jean Bonnet with the tiaras and showgirl outfits. I was in my little Mary Janes and my Easter dress and missing 2 teeth when I was 6. Really sexy stuff. And, but it gave me a lot of confidence because some of the audiences were 5,000 people in these huge event centers. And it was just a great way to grow up. And she helped so many women with their self-esteem that it set me on a course of wanting to be a motivational speaker and help people. And so I'm very grateful for that. So it started with her.
And during that time, talk about your model. Did it continue on into adulthood, or was this something you did while you were at that stage in life?
No, it kept going. In college, I was a Janssen swimsuit model. I don't know if you remember the Janssen swimsuit brand. I'm dating myself here. And then I continued to do a lot of fashion shows. And then I became a professional singer and enjoyed that more. So I told my mom, I said, I don't want to model the clothes. I just want to sing. So she let me sing 2 or 3 songs during these big shows. And then I helped design the sets, which got me going on a career in painting wall murals and designing weddings and doing facades, which is still a huge love of mine today. I segued that into creating an escape room business because I love creating the environments and the puzzles and the clues. And that was a huge thrill for me. So it all kind of flowed together. It's all creative. And I feel so blessed that I've been able to make a living doing the things I enjoy doing. So I painted over 4,000 wall murals across the country in 40 years. I have more ugly clothes than nice clothes, and was lucky enough to have work in Robert Redford's office at his Sundance Resort and the late John Denver's home. So really, it was really good to me. But I never stopped wanting to just write. And finally, I stopped painting, and it was kind of nice to write because nobody's watching you. When I was doing the murals, I always had an audience because I'd be in commercial establishments while they were open, and people would come up and talk to me, which is fine. But now I'm really relishing the solitary work of being an author.
And touching on the author part, let me go back real quick because I was going to jump into it right now, but I won't do that. How did you both meet? Because you and Thomas have a lot of things in common, not only with the paranormal, but also with researching the criminal minds and murders and things like that. So how did this relationship start? Where did you all meet?
Do you want to tell it, Tom?
Yeah, we'll kind of do it together. But well, there's a home here in Connecticut, in Enfield, and the people that live there, there's been a few people that have investigated the home, and just as it goes, a lot of the people that investigated have health issues now. So it's almost like somebody keeps grabbing the baton. So I've had the baton over the last couple of years, and we did some pretty major investigations there. One, we had people come from all over the country, and I actually lived in the house for almost a week, and just to take in what's going on. And so, with that, I got a call, and the family said that there's going to be a book written about the house and the history, and wanted me to talk to the author. And I got, in touch with Rebecca and did a phone interview, and we just talked about other stuff too, and found a lot of common ground. And I've been wanting, stay in touch with her with a lot of other things, like especially I'm doing a podcast right now, an 8-week podcast with some friends about serial killers and murderers. And all I could think of, I got to get Rebecca on there with me because the Pam Hupp story and all that. So we did that last week, and just her knowledge of that, which excites me because I don't get to talk to a lot of people that are well versed on, the true crime like she is. So it's fun because me being paranormal and true crime and serial killers, it's all the same thing, for me, because nobody can really figure out the exact mind of a serial killer, as we can't figure out the exact reason for paranormal. So that's why I kind of love the two. It's the chase. And I think Rebecca and I really enjoy those types of things. She's a writer. I'm more of an investigator, thinker, event organizer, but we seem to get along really well. And I think that's important when you have a relationship on that side of things too.
What I appreciated with the conversation I had when I first talked with Tom was it blew me away because he has such a vast knowledge of things. I didn't know anything about the Connecticut witch trials. I wrote a book about the Salem witch trials. And so we went into that, and he is, very well versed in Native American traditions and shamans. And after I hung up from him, I just thought, that's got to be in the top 3 best conversations I've ever had. And it's one of those where you wish you could just live closer and sit down in the living room and just talk about stuff. So, and then we've both, planned events, and I know what all goes into that, and that he does it on the scale that he does. My hat's off to him.
Wow, because now we get into the topic we're bringing you both here for, which we're crossing over crime and paranormal. And it seems that a lot of folks get caught up in these crimes that are very, very famous, but very few people focus on things that are, I guess, that were not as well covered. And with some of these occasions, I'll call them, where paranormal and crimes come together, can you name a famous case that you both know that has both in the same universe?
Of paranormal and true crime?
Yes.
Well, for me, Lizzie Borden, because the house today is still very haunted, and I wrote The History and Haunting of Lizzie Borden. What about you, Thomas? Can you think of one?
I'd have to probably go with Herb Baumeister. He, being a serial killer, and his home has had quite a few TV shows there doing investigations. There was a book written about the haunting there also. I'm trying to remember who wrote that. I think it might be somebody that you know, Rebecca. He's got the English accent.
Oh, Richard Estep?
Yeah, he wrote. Yeah, he wrote the book about Herb Baumeister's place, the Fox Hollow.
Yes, Foxhole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard's a prolific writer. He's
Yeah.
very talented.
Yeah, he's very good. And yeah, so he's like, that aspect of it. But there's a lot of them. I think you can't have like a murder case or anything like that with that trauma that doesn't lead to a possible paranormal happening. So you leave that mark.
I agree with you. How does that not imprint
Yeah.
on, because, one of my favorite topics is the stone tape theory. And most of the older buildings had quartz in them somewhere, whether it was granite, limestone. When you think of all of these medieval castles, and the favorite thing is the hooded monk that walks across the, and disappears into the wall. And it's the monk ghost does the same loop every time. You can't interact with it. It's like a VHS tape. And what I found out was that most of these castles were built with limestone and quartz is used in radio transmitters and receivers. And I thought, well, that makes total sense because we're energy. And in a traumatic event, that energy is released like a bomb. And if it imprinted on crystal quartz, why not replay back under certain circumstances, environmental or whatever, and I've got no problem with that.
Yeah,
That's my pet theory.
yeah. Well, you're definitely right about the bomb of energy, because it goes in reverse too. Where somebody passes away, a lot of that energy is released. But then when they're stuck, and I've helped energy make the decision to leave, and you could feel that burst of energy when they finally make the decision to leave too. That's what still dumbfounds me, scientific way, why that happens. So, and I think that's the other part of the chase. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a tragic thing all at the same time.
Well, people are 99.9% energy and light. And that's why when we die, this meat suit we're wearing may go into the ground or cremated, but that energy, you can't kill energy. It just
Yeah,
changes form.
exactly.
And so why people get freaked out about ghosts and spirits, I don't know, because that energy has to go somewhere. And sometimes it lingers for whatever reason. And I think that's why all of us are so fascinated with paranormal. Why are they here? What do they want? For me, that's the ultimate mystery. Not that they exist, but what is the purpose and what are they hoping for?
Yeah, because you get so many different layers of it. Just like in life, you get so many different types of people. And I think energy, you maintain a little bit of consciousness. So, if somebody was not such a nice person or that, and that's how it weighs. And I think that's what goes when a home over time has murders, suicides, and stuff. Speaking of that, like the book that you just recently wrote, that has everything. I mean, what we're talking about, you know, what's paranormal and what's true crime. So in the book you just wrote that I was part of with you, it has all that.
It
And,
does. I mean,
yeah.
you've got murders and suicides. We're talking about the 1771 Enfield House in Connecticut. Used to be called the Enfield Demon House. But yeah, I mean, I've never, 200 years of history in that home of murders, suicides, mysterious falls, neighbors. It spread to the neighboring homes where people accidentally caught on fire, more murders, more. I mean, I have never seen a story like this in my life. And to speak to what Thomas just said, one of the things he did at the house, and I'll let you tell the story, was when you were helping some of the spirits cross over, and tell him what happened when one of your team was waiting out front and you'd
Yeah.
helped about 7 or 8 spirits cross over.
Yeah. So we were upstairs. There was 3 of us are shamans, and then the other person was a psychic medium. And we were just reaching out to the spirits, and we had a device going where we were communicating, just spiritually and also through your ITC devices and all that. And we're picking up all these different people, and we just one by one, we found out, they told us their story. They wanted to move on, didn't know how to. We got to the point where, we started telling them, well, hey, if what's the greatest thing that's ever happened to you? What's your best memory? And so, well, I really like daisies. So I said, well, find the field of daisies. And they said, oh, I see it. And they said, oh, see it. They would leave and there'd be a change. And we just kept going, all these different people. We're upstairs and somebody was outside that's able to see also as a psychic. And they're out there and they literally watched 8 spirits that we helped pass on walk out the front door as a shadow figure and down the street.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That was one
It's
of my
amazing,
favorite
Thomas.
parts. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts.
But for them to be in a total different part of the house and us knowing that we passed 8 without talking to this person, they said to us, what were you doing up there? I just watched 8 shadow figures walk out the front door and down the street. That's amazing. That's dumbfounding also at the same time, because I don't think I've ever been part of that many leaving. Usually it's like 1, maybe 2, but 8, yeah, it was crazy. This house is very active and it remains active.
Now, going into the topic you both were just talking about helping these souls go to another place where they can be happier or cross over. What about, I hope the question is not silly, but I'm very serious when I ask this question. A person that committed the murder or whoever it is, would they be willing to cross over, and can they cross over?
I think that's more Thomas's field
Yeah,
than
I,
mine.
you know what I'm thinking is them hurting somebody is a trauma too. The trauma to, with anything of forgiveness, they forgive themselves, or if sometimes the spirits that they've taken their lives are still around them, that trauma stays intertwined sometimes, is what the theory is. But I think if you make that reparation or whatever in passing, I think that will help you cross over. But I think a lot of it is I have to hear their story. You can't just pass somebody on without hearing the story. A lot of times that's what's holding them back. All they need is somebody to hear who they were in life, and all that. And I've talked about this before, the second death. The first death, of course, is like Rebecca taught, our meat suit's gone. Our energy's still there. But the second death is when nobody ever says your name ever again. People just want their stories told. They want to be remembered. And sometimes that's all it takes in the spiritual world, is that I do remember you, I hear your story, and that helps them make the decision to leave. Sometimes it's a trauma that's holding them back, or they don't know. You could be in a car accident, knocked out, didn't know you passed. There are some situations that I'm still dealing with somebody was intoxicated at the time they were killed, and their spirit still thinks they're intoxicated. So
Hmm.
they can't seem to make that connection to be able to pass. So it takes a while with certain things, and what I've come into contact with, the different energies, what we found evidence wise. But I've told you before, I'm not a big film it and put it on TikTok or any of those things. I think it's more of a private thing for me to help the living and the dead. And I think that's what they want. I hear their story. As long as somebody hears them, they do make that decision to leave.
Well, look at social media. We are all wanting somebody to see us. I
Hmm.
mean, that's what social media is in a nutshell. It gave people who felt invisible for most of their lives a way to show their face, their accomplishments, their 15 minutes of fame, whatever you want to call it. Why is it so different just because we've died? Because that consciousness goes on. And sometimes I think the ghosts, if you want to call them ghosts, spirits, whatever, what if nobody's telling their story right?
Hmm.
And they're still trying to say, wait a minute, that's not what I did. That's not what my life was. I mean, when they say unfinished business, which you hear that a lot, what if that is part of it?
Yeah.
Because people ask me about spirits, and I don't know about as much about them as Thomas does, but I said, just because grandma died, if she was nice, she's not suddenly going to be mean and awful because she's now a spirit. Her personality's not going to change. A lot of people have this concept that if it's a ghost, it's going to scare you, it's evil. That's ridiculous. Their personality doesn't change because they passed away. And I find that to be an interesting concept people seem to have.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the big thing is for us, a lot of people are afraid because they don't understand. That's with anything, even our society as we're living. When you don't understand a certain person, that creates fear sometimes, and that's how our society goes. That separation. But even in the spirit world, when we don't understand, that's, of course, they're going to be afraid. But I think, going into an investigation, or like yourself, when you're doing your research for a book, once you have all that research done and you know what you're possibly dealing with, it's a little easier. It's not as frightening.
Hmm.
It makes more sense that if I go into a home, I want to know who lived there. I want to know who I might be talking to. I want to know, by records how they died. And if I'm going to counsel somebody that's stuck, I need to know these things. It's just with anything else. If you don't know, you're just throwing a ball against the wall and just, hope it comes back to you. It isn't guaranteed. So you have to do that research, into these things. It's like with a book. You're doing research, you want to make sure that everything's covered. It's the same thing with an investigation. You got to do your due diligence with everything. You got to do all your research and all that. And you're going in, you're writing the words, Rebecca. I'm dealing with the emotions and that with my history and how I'm going to get that stuff out. of the living, and then how I'm going to deal with the dead to make those decisions to make the story end better in that situation.
Absolutely. I mean, the 1771 Enfield House was my
Mm.
7th book in the History and Haunting series. And in all of those places, and they're in the top 10 most haunted places in the world, because one of them was the Palace of Versailles in Paris. But I go and I stay in these places, and oftentimes I'm all by myself, which I didn't plan it that way, but it's weird how that keeps happening. And, I've had something sit on the bed. I've had a kick the bed, sit on my feet. I've heard gunshots in the hallway. I've watched my earrings move down a mantle. I've had all of this stuff happen to me. I never felt truly frightened in that I thought it was going to hurt me. It's always frightening to have something touching you and you can't see it, but I never felt threatened. And I'm so sentimental that I'm the one patting the bed going, come tell me what happened to you. And maybe they pick up on that vibe. I don't know. But to your point, Thomas, I researched the bejubies out of these places, whether it's the Stanley Hotel or whatever, because if you don't know the bones of the story, you've got nothing. You've got a dry essay report. And you need to know what happened to the people there and to the structure and what land it was built on and what came before it. And that's my favorite part, is the research. I'm never happier than when I'm sitting with old newspapers in an archive. So you're absolutely right. That's the only way to go about it. You have to know that part of it. It's like skipping to the end of a book and reading the last page, and you have no idea what came before it.
And touching with the research you've done, Rebecca, and the several books that you've had, out of all these cases that you've studied and written about, can you think of one that as you're researching, you eventually start writing that, which one got you the most as far as like, wow, this is gruesome, or I can't believe what I'm
Gruesome?
reading? Yes.
Well, the Anfield House had some pretty sad, awful things, suicides, hangings, things like that. And I'm not downplaying that at all. But the one that ripped my heart out was the Salem witch trials, because make no mistake, that was murder. The girls admitted later they did it for sport. And what always amazed me was after watching the first one hang, Bridget Bishop, they could have stopped it right then. When they realized, holy moly, they're really going to kill these people based on what we're saying, but they didn't. And 19 people. And I'll tell you, there were times when I was writing about, like Rebecca Nurse, 72 years old and very religious and a sweet person. And they called her a witch, and she, went to trial for it. They were going to let her go. The judges let her go home after she'd been imprisoned in those horrible jails. And the girls didn't want her to go home. And so that night, they said she came in through the window in her spectral form and choked me and pinched me. And they had them bring that poor woman back, and they hung her. And I gotta tell you, I was crying at that point. It just really got to me. I thought, how would it feel after being in those horrendous jail conditions? We're talking, well, I won't go into all of it, but finally get to go home and your loved ones are hugging you and you get to take a bath and get out of those clothes and you think you're safe, and they pull you back and then hang you and hang your sister. To me, that is gruesome. That it's just horrible, and they could have stopped it, and they didn't.
You're exactly right with that one. I think out of all your books and all that. But really, we talked about before the Connecticut witch trials was 45 years before Salem, the same type of thing. But it still goes on today. Like we talked about earlier, social media.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't like somebody, they gang up on these people. And some of these people, it's not exactly, you're not hanging somebody or saying somebody to the point where they get murdered or hung or anything like that. But some of these people are treated so badly that psychologically they can't get themselves out of it, and they end up committing suicide because of the treatment they got from other people on social media. It's the same thing. It's just a different outcome, but it's still that pressure that people get together and they say, well, we're going to get rid of this person, and they're just going to keep saying what they say and play that game. That's the sad thing about it, is history is very important. What, of course, what you write about, Rebecca, what I was talking about on this show right now, people got to understand, if we don't learn from history, we're going to keep repeating it. And that's
Yeah.
what we do in a way or another. Not exactly the way, but it's still part of the way.
Every time I do an interview for the Salem book, people always end by saying, do you think this could happen again? It
Sure.
already did. When you look at McCarthyism, in fact, that's why Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible. He
Yeah.
used the Salem witch trials as the analogy, but it was written about the communist movement that went on.
Yeah.
And the Hollywood 10, that, when that went through Hollywood producers and everything, calling them communists. It doesn't take much. Now, to me, the Salem witch trials was the perfect storm, because it was a lot of different things. It wasn't just one. But of course it could happen today. And look what happened to America when they cut us off for 2 years with COVID. There was panic. I don't think that it would take much, once you take people out of their normal environment, to have it turn badly quickly. And that's my opinion. Of course it could happen again today.
Yeah.
And with social media, you've got all of these new guns you can point, because you've got a whole new vehicle that they didn't even have to get your angst and your hatred and everything out there. And I don't think it would take much. Do you?
No, not now. You're exactly right. What's going on right now is we have these unidentified objects in New Jersey that everybody's freaking out over. And I still firmly believe that it's just another way to desensitize us for something bigger to come. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm worried about right now. I'm very worried about not what's flying above us, about what's being planned, and desensitizing us to what is my question.
Well, my brother was in the Secret Service for 5 of the United States presidents, and there was a lot he couldn't tell me. He came in at the tail end of Nixon and went out with George Bush. And he said, if I told you everything that went on, you'd leave the country, which always scared me. But he always tried to protect me and wouldn't tell me things that were going on. But he was stationed at the Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. I was 21 years old. I'd just gotten married, and my husband and I came to visit, he and his wife. And at 2:00 in the morning, I heard him run down the hallway. And I stuck my head out the door and I said, what are you doing? And he said, go back to bed. He's 6 years older than I am. And I said, Michael, what are you doing? He said, I'll be back. Go back to bed. Well, I was so rattled that I couldn't sleep. And when I finally heard him come in a few hours later, I went out in the living room and his hand was shaking and he's trying to pour himself a bourbon or something. I said, Michael, talk to me. And it was a cattle mutilation. And that was my first introduction to the whole UFO thing. And I've never seen my brother rattled. And he said, Beck, there were no tracks. He said it had rained. This cow was literally in the middle of a field, no hoof prints going up to it, no tire marks, no nothing. And it was the same laser cuts and incisions and organs removed that you've heard about. He said it looked like something just laid it down right there. And I never forgot that. It freaked me out, mainly because I'd never seen him like that. But after that, he wouldn't tell me all that he knew about Area 51 and all of these other things. And he passed away this year. And it was really, there was a part of me that always hoped that later he'd tell me things, and I didn't get that chance. So.
Yeah, I had the same thing with my uncle. My uncle was a world-renowned expert on launching devices for nuclear weapons. So he would teach incoming presidents about nuclear weapons and what they could do and all this other stuff. And, we never knew exactly what he did. So it was one of those, he came out of, the army intelligence, and did all these things for the government, and very good friends with high up people and counterterrorism and all that. But, he passed away recently too. And we never knew exactly what he did. He never talked about it. He always had that look on his face that there's a lot I know. If I ever told you, then yeah, exactly. You'd probably want to leave the country. So, yeah, that's stern.
There's so
Stern
much
look.
out there. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm huge into Egypt. I
Yeah.
love the ley lines. I love all of this stuff. And that's what keeps people intrigued is the mystery. I hope we never solve all of them. I like the mystery part.
Yeah. Same thing about the paranormal. We'll never, ever agree 100% on that. Same thing like we talk about true crime. We'll never be able to 100% figure out what's going through the mind of a person to make them switch from just having trauma to actually being a serial killer. We'll never know what the switch is. So we could speculate, but
And
it's
how much
also,
of it is just a mental aberration they were born with, and how
yeah,
much of it was environment and nurturing or not nurturing? I mean, yeah, it is fascinating. When people ask me, aren't you afraid of the ghosts? I go, no, I'm more afraid of the living than I
yeah,
am of the
exactly.
ghosts.
Yeah. But I think we'll go back to the Enfield house. I think you were talking about how you would stay in all the houses, and I think you kind of had a issue with the Enfield one.
I didn't, yeah, I've never written about a demon.
Yeah.
And even though they believed that the demon, in fact, they thought there were two there, one in the attic and one in the cellar, that they were successfully exorcised in 2015, I was still very nervous about going in there. And I don't scare easily. So I did hear footsteps overhead while I was interviewing them on the family side. This home is a duplex. So one half they rent out to paranormal teams to let them research, and the other half of the family lives there. And when I interviewed, I was there 2 days. I stayed in a hotel nearby, and that's the first time I've done that. In all the books I've written, I've stayed in the places. But in the renter side, which was the first day I interviewed them, I felt fine. And I thought, I don't know if I'm buying this whole thing. But the next day when I went on to the family side of the unit, it was so totally different. There was this thickness to the atmosphere. And I just felt my heart pick up a little bit. And it wasn't imaginary because it didn't happen to me on the renter side. I actually thought, I'm not seeing anything here. And then while I'm interviewing them, the owner, Elka, she and I both looked up at the ceiling at the same time, and you could hear the steady tread of somebody walking right above our head. And we were all accounted for. And the staircase to the second floor was right by us. It's the only way up or down. And when it's time to go up there, I didn't want to. And then by the time we got to the attic, I was darn near having an anxiety problem. It felt like something wanted to hurt me. And when we were heading down the stairs, I put my husband in front of me and put my hand on his shoulder and made sure someone else was behind me because I thought something was going to push me. I've never had that feeling before. Um, so writing the book was a little more difficult for me because of the demonic aspect of it. Now today, what they have is a plethora of paranormal activity, not so much the demonic. Do you agree with that, Thomas?
Yeah, I think a lot of it left back in 15, 16. Good friend of ours, Joe Frankie, who's part of the Warren Legacy Foundation, but he worked 40 years side by side with the Warrens. And when he investigated at the time, he was calling in backup on it. And unfortunately, at the time, Lorraine Warren was already in her mid 80s. And on one of the investigations, one of the women, she was maybe short, 5'5", maybe 5'6", probably about 200 and something pounds, a big woman. This woman was picked up and tossed down the hallway and all that. And then Joe is relaying this to Lorraine, and Lorraine's daughter Judy says, I can't have my mom go. It's too dangerous. So Lorraine helped out via phone, just giving some advice. And, they had several priests come in, and then finally, I forget who it was, but they finally got some peace in the house.
Yeah,
But
Jay Dodd and
yeah,
Neil Farley finally did. But the thing I mean, Raph, this place, it's 200 years of stuff that, I mean, just inexplicable things. Entire families almost wiped out. Really weird stuff. Charles Campanetto was a gangster in 1930 that he just got up from lunch one day, walked down the street, stabbed a woman that he was having an affair with 7 times, and then stabbed and shot her husband, and then shot himself in the head and died. They brought him back and laid him on the floor at the Enfield house. And a lot of people believe that's the blood stain that's still there because it's in the shape of a torso and it's been there forever. But what was really strange is that when Jay, who is the owner, Jay and Elka Yapel own it, they had a friend helping them take down a wall, and out of it fell all of these 45 shell casings, not the bullets, the empty casings. And who puts those in a wall? And the spooky thing is that when this same Charles Campanetto moved into the house, a family was already living there and they disappeared. The food was still on the table. All of their belongings, their clothes, their toiletries, nobody ever found them. And later, Charles Campanetto Jr., this gangster's son, actually talked to Jay, the guy that owns it today, and he said, well, all I can tell you is don't dig in the basement. So fun times. I do think there's a well in that cellar that's been covered up. I found a ledger that showed there were some well repairs done way back in the mid 1800s. But there is so much going on at that house, and I don't see how it couldn't, with everything that's happened within those walls. People being pushed downstairs, ghost shadow figures passing through the walls, demons appearing as growling dogs, and it is probably one of the most bizarre stories I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's for me, it's probably one of the craziest ones to be involved with. I wasn't there at the time where it was really like a big thing, but really back when they were first there, I remember they had all kinds of people come in, and I had gotten a phone call about the place that maybe I should go take a look at it, and I never did. And it goes back to tell you things like, yeah, you get the phone call, you get interested to go, and then something changes. It's almost like it's not your time to go there yet to help. It's one of those things that I think at the time. But helping now and all that, it is a bizarre place. The reason why we try to help a lot now is because they do have people come investigate on the renter side. And sometimes there's a lot going on that they can't keep track of. So you worry about some people going there for the wrong intention and, resurrecting something that's been laid dormant. I really think with demonic stuff, it lays dormant, waiting to be reawakened by the same reason it came to begin with. And that's what they have to be careful of. And we tell them all the time, you got to be careful who you invite into the home and all that. They don't let anybody really in on the side they live on. We had full access to that. When I stayed in the home for a week, I slept in the house with me and a couple other people, and we got to investigate both sides. But it seems like that duplex, it's almost like, okay, where is the most havoc going on, or where's the people most afraid? And it seems to go from one side to the other. Sometimes the family's having a good day and whatever's on the renter side. And then some people come in and the spirits may not like that, and they go back to the other side. It's almost like a cat and mouse game in the house with the spirits.
And it's still going on today. Mackenzie Yapel is the 18-year-old daughter. They have a pair of twins that are both 18. And Mackenzie, on the renter side, will make t-shirts that she sells at fairs and so forth up in the master bedroom. And the spirits will let her know when her time's up, because she's up there late into the early morning hours. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, it starts with scraping coming from the closet, then knocks on the wall. And she goes, sometimes I'll go, just give me 10 more minutes, I'm almost done. And it gets louder to let her know your time's up. It's our turn to have this side of the house. And she's so calm about it. And I think it's because she's so used to it now.
Yeah.
But one of the things they saw that freaked me out the most was called the dripping lady. And this is an apparition of a younger teenage girl. She thinks she's about 13, that's soaking wet in a long white gown, long dark hair. And people were feeling water coming out of nowhere, dripping on them. And where there were rooms with no pipes or anything. And a lot of her friends have witnessed it, a lot of people who've been there. And then finally, this thing started showing up and it was hovering above their beds and she's soaking wet and she just drips on people. And that's new for me.
Yeah.
I have not heard that one.
I, I
Yeah,
think a lot
that
of
kind
it
of
was.
reminds me of the folklore from Guatemala or Mexico called La Llorona, or the
Mhm.
Crier, where there was some sort of incident in a lake or a river, and she comes out of that river, and same thing, the apparition is wet and really scares the townsfolk. So I don't know if there's a relation, but it seems kind of similar.
I wondered if it might be that I know there was a well on the property because it's in the ledgers that they had repairs done. Did she fall down the well? They're only 20 minutes from where the witch trials went on. Was this some young girl that they dunked in the lake or the river? Because they're only 2 blocks from the Connecticut River, which was called swimming the witch, to see if it was one of the tests they did to see if you were a witch. It's interesting. I couldn't find anything in the research of anyone living at the house, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen there. Although a lot of people, psychics and so forth, think the house today is like a train station for spirits coming through. It's like a portal. And they could be coming from anywhere, but they're drawn to this house. I think they're drawn to the twins because they have some sensitive energy about them. Some people think they're drawn to Jay as well. His grandmother had some stuff going on. But it seems like that place is just so many spirits going through. Like Thomas was saying, I mean, he cleared 7 or 8 of them. Were they all part of that house or were they passing through? It's interesting.
It is true, when you have ability, you become a beacon of light, and it's like flies to the light. People that are looking for help, they're wondering why they here and don't know where they are, and they need help. They need to hear their story. It's the same thing when you open that portal, you want to call it. I really don't want to call it a portal anymore,
Yeah.
but there is that part of it, and we try to help shut that down where it doesn't is active. But really, you could open that stuff right back up on how your intention and how you put things into the home. Like I said, keep having all these investigators in. But I think a lot of it, talking about the young girl that was dripping wet. The other theory that I kind of talked to them about was just the fact that that land and area, there was a major Indian massacre by some of the British, and getting rid of a whole tribe in that area, specifically there. I don't know. There's not enough record. But when you really put into Native Americans, they're always going to be by a river, a water source, and all that, with fertile land, which Enfield had at the time. So you could really put yourself in that place as some kind of Native American land. Burial grounds, probably not. I don't see enough bounded area in that, but that could have been changed over time. But I really think sometimes elemental spirits will show themselves, with
Yeah.
that element of water, fire, whatever you want to say, for having a young girl dripping and all that, showing herself as a young girl to the young girls, that concerned me. It's another type of what you want to put. Indian lore is the demonic side of, you know, Indian lore is to send those elementals for a warning, to you're not respecting the land. And so, of course, when we were there, we did a land ceremony and all that to try and help out with that type of stuff. But you never know what's going to work. Sometimes it's not just a one-day thing. It's something that's got to continue. They got to continue to have respect for the land. Anybody that comes in there that investigates, they need to have respect for the family, respect for the spirits there. It's fun to go in and learn about the paranormal, but like I've told the family, I'm concerned that you're going to have the wrong people come in and try and conjure things. And, then somebody like myself, Joe Frankie, John Zaffis, who have all worked at the house, have to go in and try and help them again. You're putting new energy in there that doesn't belong in there.
When you're opening a door.
Yeah.
And then you get to go home, but the family's stuck with it.
Yeah. And I know the family's been through a lot. They're used to it. It's an everyday thing, but things have shifted over the year for them and all that. And that's why a lot of us have gone in again. I think it's calmed down again since we were last there. But there's always something there. There's always something going on. And it's unfortunate when you're a family and you've been there for 18 years and you have this stuff day in and day out, you become used to it, it becomes part of you.
Yeah.
It's it's a trauma.
Well, and a lot of these stories, in fact, my next book is The History and Haunting of the Smurl Family, which will be the story behind the new Conjuring 4 movie coming out next September. It followed them.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot. I mean, there's a lot of movies and based on true events where, they tried to escape, but it was attached at that point and it followed them. And that's got to be scary because you've already uprooted your whole life, maybe probably taken a huge financial loss to move. And then to hear the noises all over again, that'd be so traumatizing for me. What a sense of helplessness that you can't outrun it.
Yeah. Well, that's where it comes in. That's what I'm talking about now with the family there. Even if they left, I think there's things that they have to come to terms with if they did leave. There's a term that we refer to as, in psychologically is familiar demons. So it sounds scary, but what it is I've talked to Raph about this before, is your traumas and all that, you can manifest that type of negative thing to the point where you could bring it into fruition. So it's like an egregore, or your thought process. You're negative all the time. You could bring that, say, demonic in there because you have unhealed trauma, and them going through what they went through in that house. A lot of that's created. A normal person will look at it as somebody having a psychiatric issue. Sometimes it's not always that. It is a spiritual thing as opposed to a mental thing.
Well, they feed off the negative energy,
exactly.
That's for sure.
Yep. And that's what I always tell the family to be careful of. If you're feeling like you're having a bad day, leave the house. Just go somewhere for a little while. Go for a walk in the woods or something. Get back in touch. Change your day around and all that. Don't just stay in the house and stew in it, because it creates more of that negativity.
Now, with these things going on in the homes, is there a way to make this stop permanently? I mean, because bulldozing a house is not going to do any good, because you can put an apartment building in there because it's not really the home in itself, it's the land. So how can you permanently close a gate of sorts like this? Because it seems that no matter who goes there, they're always going to have this type of experience. So how can you make that stop?
It is you as a person. We have to face ourselves in the mirror every morning and what we put into it. Because let's take the Amityville house. The negativity I was put into it, the family that was there that had the problem, they were doing a lot of things of conjuring from what I've come to find out after. And I think that created that particular haunting. But nobody's really had a problem with the house after. It's what you put into it. How can you permanently stop something? Stop giving it power. I've had a lot of cases, just like Enfield, these demonic cases. I don't give it power anymore. I don't even talk about it. I will not go on, unfortunately, I wouldn't go on your podcast and talk about some of my places that I've been, that I've run into that, because I feel like if I talk about it, I give it power again to reawaken it. So as long as you take that trauma or that demonic situation, and I've told people this before, I take it, I put it on a shelf, I let it collect dust. It's always going to be there, but as long as it keeps getting dust, it's not going to reactivate. And that's what we have to do as human beings. We have to go forward positively and try and put, those things behind us. But any traumas we have to either live to learn with it or try and, rid it. It's the same thing with an alcoholic. They go through their step program and all that. But they're still considered an alcoholic, but that's the same thing. Put that alcoholism on the shelf, let it collect dust, and go through your steps and in your healing and your trauma. I think a lot of paranormal will go away if people just take the time to look in the mirror and be real with themselves and find the positivity, because we're all good people, you know, deep down. We just have to find what makes us happy. And it's, I guess, easier said than done. And that's why we
Yeah.
still have what we have.
Well, I'll tell you something funny, kind of. Um, I worried about that writing this book because I gave it a lot of attention. Plus, I
Mhm.
interviewed 10 people like yourself, experts in the field, John Zaffis, all these people, Joe Frankie. And I was nervous when I got home and was writing it. And it came out 9 days ago on Friday the 13th. The Kindle version's coming out tomorrow, I believe.
Right.
But 4 nights ago, I started hearing scratchings in my wall in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh, great. And I was freaking out because I thought, okay, it's maybe it's a mouse. Well, I've never seen a mouse since I've lived in this house. And 3 nights in a row, and it sounded like something chewing on something. It would be above my head, above the ceiling fan. It would be in my closet. I could hear it in there, and I was really starting to get nervous.
Mhm.
And then I finally found where the little booger had chewed through something in my closet, and it was a mouse.
Yeah.
And that's so funny that I'm so grateful it was a mouse. Most women aren't going to be real thrilled about that. I got
Yeah.
some stuff now that sends out those sounds that only mice can hear, and now I haven't had it bother me, but I was so happy to see that hole in the bag in my closet where it had chewed its way out.
That's why I have cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, cats are great for that. I had 5 cats at one point. No, one mouse
Yeah.
in my house ever. It's
Yeah.
the greatest thing.
Okay, I'm getting a kitty.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
There you go.
So,
Get two. They keep each other company, and they get to
Okay.
gang up on anything trying to get in your house like that.
One of
so
my favorite commercials is the dogs versus cat owners. And it's showing the dog walker, the guy walking his dog in 3 feet of snow,
Yeah.
and the guy that owns the cat's curled up in his bed all warm.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
go use the litter box, buddy.
so now, Rebecca, with all the books that you have out now, you have the new one that just been released recently. For the listeners of Let's Find Out that want to learn more about you, your books, and where you're going to be in 2025, where can they find out?
My website's www.RebeccaF, as in Frank, Pittman, Pittman books.com. So Rebecca F. Pittman books.com. I have 3 more books coming out next year, and I've written 18 now. It doesn't seem possible, but it fascinates me, and I'm so grateful people love what I do. It lets me keep doing what I'm passionate about. And thank you for having me on here and sharing your forum with me.
Of course, the minute Thomas sent me your information, it's like, oh, we're going to have Rebecca on. We're going to talk about this. And Thomas, 2025 is looking really good for you. Can you go over one more time what you're going to be doing?
Well, I got a part of a TV show coming out. I got a couple episodes. I think the one's going to be coming up by the time we air this one. It'll probably already be out on Paraflix, Dark Echoes. Of course, part of Rebecca's book on the history and haunting of the 1771 Enfield House. Lots of normal investigations, but a lot of events. Connecticut Paracon, Salem Paracon, the Connecticut Witch Trial Festival, psychic fairs, just investigations that people get to come along with us. Always got stuff going on, but I'm on Facebook, Thomas Patrick Gormley. All the other avenues, your TikToks, your Instagrams. I'm of course the Archangel of the Paranormal. If anybody has something they want me to look into, I don't do a lot of home cases anymore, but a lot of times I get called when it's okay, nobody could figure it out. We need to call somebody. So I'm still able to do that. So, www.archangel of the paranormal at, gmail.com or whatever, the Archangel of the Paranormal at gmail.com is how they could get a hold of me by email. And that way I can reach out. And if anybody has, I don't give out my phone number. Most people I always tell, if you're going to call me, I don't have you in my system, just text me so I know it's somebody not trying to sell me something.
Try to sell you on that car warranty is running out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what the drones are for New Jersey. That's what they're trying to do.
Well, that makes sense to me.
He has a great interview in my book, and we have all of his upcoming things and his contact information. And Thomas, thank you for what you did for me. I mean, that was a great interview, a great contribution to the book.
Oh God, I appreciate it so much. I was glad I was able to help out. Like I said, if I could help somebody out, and I'm always there for people, I'll make the time. You know, I think it's important to make time for friends, family, or somebody looking, you know, to go down that avenue. Anything I could do to help.
Well, Raph, what about you? What's
Oh my goodness.
2025 doing for you?
More podcasting. I have now that, like I said, I really hate myself. So I started a second podcast, Bonus Overdrive Wednesdays. So I'll be putting a lot of energy into that. Same thing with this show, but that's what I see myself doing. I'm eventually, and I always say I've traveled so much during my wrestling days that I'm a poor traveler now, but I got to make it to some of these Paracons. I got to go to Maine one day, and I'm just have to fly there instead of drive. But before we go, Connecticut is closer than Maine for sure. Before we go, Rebecca, you mentioned something earlier, and I promise I'll make this super quick. You mentioned earlier in the show that your brother worked in the Secret Service, correct?
Yes.
And it was during the Nixon administration?
He came in at the tail end of Nixon. He did go with him to Red China. Mike was in charge of the security for Air Force One. So every time one of the presidents flew anywhere, he was in charge of Air Force One and went with them.
Okay, so this might be a topic for another podcast. Maybe I'll have you back on. Did he ever mention to you the story and the connection of Jackie Gleason, Nixon, and UFOs?
He didn't, but I've been watching that. That's pretty darn interesting.
Yes,
and
it
Jackie
is.
Gleason, of all people. Yeah, I watched a documentary on that. He
Yeah.
didn't. He was very, very careful. He said there were stuff about the JFK assassination he couldn't tell me about. Drove me nuts because I'm a researcher, and it drove me nuts that he couldn't tell me stuff.
You know, sometimes it's better not to know. And with Jackie Gleason, you know, he made a house that looked exactly like a UFO ship.
No.
Yeah, like I said, that'll be a topic for another show. So, Rebecca, when you come out with the next book, please come back on the show. We'll bring Thomas back on, and we're going to have another great conversation. And I hope to see you both in person in 2025.
Thank you. That would be lovely.
Thank you both. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as on YouTube and Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit kgradb.com. That's kgradb.com. Together, we will get one step closer to finding out. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Let's find out with Diego, the power of Diego Mania. All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.